about 10:30. So I'm going to pull up the texts for today. And here comes.
Good morning.
Morning, Lynn.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers and the mothers who made them fathers.
Yes. Let's give credit to the assistant fathers. Okay. So one of the things you're going to see here with a number of these well, at least a couple of these teachings at the end is that they tend to be a collection of biblical verses, most of them from the book of Proverbs, perhaps very intentionally as a way to get their students to remember these verses, many of which convey a very similar message. And it's not just that they support a particular view. These are verses that people were intended to memorize in a particular order, and to convey a certain positive attitude towards different aspects of our tradition. And I think that's something that you'll see as we carry through. So, Mishnah number 7, and hopefully we're going to finish Pirkei Avot today. So we'll see. All right? So, how great is Torah? To those who fulfill it, it provides life both in this world and in the world to come. As it is written, for they are life to those who find them and health to all their flesh. And it is written, it shall be health to your body and marrow to your bones. And it is written, you know this verse, Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim ba. It is a tree of life to those who grasp it. Those who hold it fast are happy. And it is written, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. And it is written, it will place a graceful garland upon your head and bestow a glorious crown upon you. And it is written, long life in her right hand, in her left are riches and honor. And it is written, for a long life, years of life and peace, they will bring you. All right? So all of these verses are used by the rabbis to illustrate just how great the Torah is. And the introduction says, Torah brings life to those who practice it in this world and in the world to come. That way, you can't miss. Not in this world, not in the next. So
is that, Rabbi, the world to come, is that the Messianic age, or is that individual?
The world to come is different from the Messianic age. The world to come is the world you're going to after you die, even if Mashiach has not yet come.
Got it. Thanks.
Right? So, you know, some of these verses really refer to wisdom in general, but the rabbis figure that wisdom really has to refer to Torah because, yeah, Torah is the highest form of wisdom. So the rabbis read all of these verses as referring to the importance and the insights of Torah. So what does it mean to have life in this world and in the world to come? It means, in some sense, you have quality and vitality in this world in ways that even some very prosperous people don't get. And if you live by the right values, then you stand above much of what bothers other folks. That's the key to being truly alive. And as for the world to come, you know, we're not meant to know too much about that. I know some of you feel like you know what's happening after you die. Right? Judaism in general expresses a faith that if you live by the, values of Torah, whatever reward there is will be there for you. And Maimonides, by the way, warns us against focusing too much on the life of the world to come and other things that we can't know about, such as the Messianic era or the apocalypse that might precede it. It's not good for us to think about things that really are beyond us and are intended to be that way. The Torah is mainly about life. Rabbi Shmuel Yanklowitz puts it this way. He says, it is the compass that points us toward all that is righteous and good. So, if we focus on that in this world, the world to come will take care of itself, whatever it might be. So now you look at these 7 verses from Proverbs, which affirm that the Torah will give us both kinds of life. First one says, they are life to those who find them and healing to their entire body. And the rabbis interpret it as saying that the Torah is life to the soul of all of us who find meaning in it, and it is healthy for us as well. It promotes physical well-being for those of us who live by it. The second verse says, health to your body and marrow to your bones, a tonic to your bones. So not only does it promote good health, but it enhances your vitality, your vibrancy, all the way to the marrow of your bones. Right? Eitz Chaim He, it is a tree of life to those who grasp it. All who uphold it are made happy. And live by the proper values, you're going to have a much more positive attitude to life. They are a graceful wreath around your head, a necklace around your throat. A wreath suggests suggests nobility, someone who is made spiritually more noble. The necklace is a physical enhancement. Through me, your days will increase. Years will be added to your life. Listening to Torah, you will have extra days, and your years will be enhanced in quality as well as quantity. Long life in her right hand, in her left are riches and honor.
What? Who is she?
Wisdom.
Wisdom, that's right. So you get the benefit of the wisdom of Torah and the reward of length of days, but you also get some benefits which make it easier to live. And then they will, for a long life, years of life and peace they will bring you. You get a combination of peace and time. Right? You get a complete view of the world at large, and you get contentedness for what you've been able to learn and accomplish. So all of these verses together say that, we have the potential to be content with our lives just by learning and living by the Torah. One of the commentaries I read on this, I don't remember which one, talked about how Edgar Allan Poe wrote a story entitled The Purloined Letter, describing a search for a stolen letter. And the police looked all over for it. The top detective got on the case, and he found it immediately in the most obvious place, in plain sight on the person's desk. Some people look for meaning in life without realizing that the answer is right there in front of us. And we Jews have that answer within our own tradition. Maimonides said, the right path combines the well-being of the body and the well-being of the soul. You take care of your physical needs, but without overdoing them. But, in order for everyone to have that, you have to remove the injustice which keeps people from achieving their potential. We learn in chapter 6 of Deuteronomy that God commanded us to do all these statutes for our good always, so that God might preserve us alive. And Maimonides says, for our good always refers to the world to come, but that God might preserve us alive refers to the body and living a healthy life. Usually, not always, but usually that is how it works out. Right? Comments or questions on anything in this Mishnah?
I don't know what the next world is like, only that there is one.
Okay, well, thank you for that affirmation, Ann.
All
A
right.
question
Rabbi.
about
Yes,
please,
Lou.
Go,
Oh,
Lou.
sorry. A
All right.
question about a reference that you made, Danny, to Maimonides, that he said not to focus too much on the world to come. Was that a reaction to Christianity and salvation being one of the pillars of, or maybe the pillar of Christianity besides Jesus?
Not so much. I mean, Maimonides didn't live in a Christian world. He lived in the Islamic world. And so he didn't necessarily feel the need to react to Christian affirmations. I mean, he certainly had opinions about Christianity, but he's not reactive to it in the way that many Ashkenazi thinkers were. Right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Daniel.
the Talmud say you mustn't think about what is before, what is after, what's above, and what's beneath?
Yeah, that's actually in the Mishnah. Do not, dwell on what is before and what is after, what is above and what is below. Right? So, there's certainly precedent for this teaching. Daniel, I believe you had a question a moment ago, or an observation.
Yes, I found a dead horse to be here, asking you, Rabbi.
I beg your pardon?
I'm asking a question that I've already asked, but I want to follow up.
Please.
The first two sentences of this section, basically paraphrasing, say, if you fulfill the law of Torah, you will have life now and in afterlife. Then, as a proof text, it says, long life in her right hand, and in her left are riches and honor. That's not really the same thing as wisdom. It is talking about a behavior in life that if you perform the mitzvot, all of them, then you're going to have abundance. And then I want to go back to why would in this passage that observance be referred to as a woman? I hope that made sense. I tried to keep it short.
I can't say why necessarily would be referred to in this verse, except that perhaps the part about riches and honor was seen as a parallel to long life. In other words, you get, long life on the one hand and quality of life on the other hand. And what is quality? Quality refers to, all the things that come from living an honorable life, which they understood to refer to the life of Torah. Okay?
So there's a principle of pro there, not to. If you're super observant, you're going to have those things.
Well, it doesn't say super observant, right?
It says to fulfill it, meaning
Yeah.
the mitzvot of the Torah.
Fine. So, I think that the book of Proverbs, having been written before rabbinic Judaism was well formed, it's a much more practical book. And the idea about riches and honor referring to Torah is kind of a later interpretation.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'm going to think about this one and write you a letter of the question following.
Okay. Yes, Ann.
It says he, that is to say, she.
Yes.
Well, it's not that it says it's a woman. It's just
Yes.
that
Well,
pronoun
wisdom
fits the
is
fact that
frequently
Chochmah is a feminine noun.
personified as a woman,
Right.
particularly in the book of Proverbs.
Well, that's because the word wisdom is a feminine noun.
Chachma, correct. Okay. Other questions or observations? All right, let's scroll down a little to number 8. Okay, more verses. Okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda taught in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. By the way, Shimon bar Yochai, we remember, he's the guy who was in hiding from the Romans for, a dozen years or so, lived in a cave for a long time, and was regarded as something of a mystic, so much so that the later authors of the Zohar identified him as the leader of the mystical circle of the Zohar. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda taught in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, beauty, strength, riches, honor, wisdom, old age, and the hoary head. Oh, by the way, hoary head is just a translation of the word seva, which literally means length of years, right? And children. All these are becoming to the righteous and becoming to the world. As it is written, the hoary head is a glorious crown achieved by the righteous life. It is written, the glory of the young is their strength, the beauty of the old, the hoary head. And it is written, the crown of the wise is their riches. And it is written, children's children are the crown of the old. Parents are the glory of their children. And it is written, and here the author breaks the norm of quoting from Proverbs, and he quotes a verse from Isaiah. The moon will be ashamed and the sun abashed, for the Lord of hosts will reign in Zion and Jerusalem. God's glory shall stand revealed before the elders. In other words, the elders will, be the ones who are privileged to view God's glory. And Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh taught these 7 virtues, that the ones mentioned at the outset here, that the sages ascribed to the righteous, were all present in Rabbi, as in Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and in his descendants. So, all these qualities that are attributed to Rabbi Shimon, that are attributed to Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, are qualities that can be distorted if they are abused, right? Beauty can be used to entice, but the righteous can use it to inspire. Strength can be used to do wrong or to do good deeds. Riches can be used for pleasure or for tzedakah. Honor can be used to satisfy the ego or to lead and to teach. Wisdom, wisdom can be used to rationalize things we want to do, or it could be used to inspire and enthuse people. Old age can be an extension of the sufferings of life, or it can be used to gain and share the things we've learned. The hoary head, that goes along with old age here. And children can be a disappointment, or they can be a blessing. Okay? So, again, most of these verses are from Proverbs. One of these verses says that the hoary head is a glorious crown achieved by a righteous life, by the path of righteousness. The rabbis comment on this, and they say, when is it that old age is a crown of glory? And the answer is saying, when you've lived a life of doing what's right, then more years mean more goodness. Some people think that being old means just doing the same old. And that's not so good. Okay? Another interesting aspect of this teaching is that the splendor of the elderly is being elderly. That old age has the potential to be one of the great blessings of life. Rabbi Martin Cohen points out it isn't saying that it's good you didn't die young. It's saying old age itself is a blessing. Old age is preferable to youth because old age is wisdom, is experience. Old age is insight into the ways of the world. And that's when you put everything together and you understand what life is all about. Longevity is a blessing not because of what old age isn't, but because of what it is. Another interesting verse from Proverbs: the glory of the young is in their strength, the beauty of the old, the hoary head, fullness of years. Right? So, we all know young people can do impressive things with their strength. Young people in general look up to the strong, to top athletes, to people who are in great shape. And by the way, as you know, I'm in excellent shape because round is a shape, right? So, we older folks, we've made it through the bigger challenges in life. We built families and lives and reputation, and that counts for a lot more than mere physical strength, right? There are different kinds of aging. Rabbi Mark Angel notes that there are those who are chronologically young, but their minds are tired and depressed, and they just plod through life without enthusiasm. They have little energy, little direction. There are other people who are chronologically old, but emotionally and psychologically, they're very young, right? Because they have energy, they have purpose, and they are intellectually curious. They want to learn, and they may look old on the outside, but they have a lot of vitality. Okay? This verse from Proverbs: the crown of the wise is their riches. Clearly doesn't mean that wise people are all wealthy. Right? It's about what wise people do with the wealth that they have. Everyone will say that people should share what they have in order to benefit the entire community. If you didn't say that, no one would think you were wise in the first place. But it's only if you are blessed with riches and you actually do share liberally that then you are truly wise. Right? Like this other verse from Proverbs, grandchildren are the crown of the old. Parents are the glory of their children. If you live by certain values and your children and grandchildren share them, that gives you a sort of a crown. That gives you great satisfaction. Sometimes children will rebel against their parents, and sometimes grandchildren will return to whatever you did that was right. So when it comes to passing on family values, the game isn't over when you are. And then this verse from Isaiah, that the moon will be ashamed and the sun abashed. The Lord of hosts will reign in Zion and Jerusalem. God's glory shall stand revealed before the elders. So the meaning of this is you should take the long view of history. Right? And in the future, everyone will understand that God is the source of the lights, and the elders will see that that honor reflects upon them if they have integrated some of that light into their lives. And then the very interesting statement at the end about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Right? Yehuda HaNasi was the editor for most of the Mishnah and probably for much of Pirkei Avot itself. And this statement tells us that his commitments and his lifestyle fit these values, and his children maintain them. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was a very wealthy man, but he never allowed that to be the main focus of his life. Okay, Daniel,
Daniel?
Yeah, Daniel, you had a comment?
I'm sorry. Some of these entries are attributed and some of them aren't. This is a general question about Pirkei Avot. Is there any particular reason why, like this one is attributed to Shimon ben Yehuda, and the one previous had no attribution? Is there any reason why those are like that?
That's a good question, and it probably is the case that if the editor of Pirkei Avot did not know who the person was who said this, but chose to include it anyway, it probably was something that he just didn't have a source for, but he thought it fit into the parameters of the chapter. And in fact, outside of this chapter, which is a later addition to Pirkei Avot, most of the teachings are, in fact, attributed to someone. It's really only in this later work. But we don't really know if they were things that the editor himself made up and included, or heard from someone but he didn't know the original source or didn't remember that, or it was just something that was passed down from way back, but nobody seemed to know who it came from.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Ann.
It says here, when the kingdom of God will go forth from Jerusalem and Zion, then his elders who were the teachers and heralds of his kingdom will shine forth as the splendor of spirit to eclipse the physical light of the sun and the moon. That's the final commentary it has on number 7.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing to add.
Other comments, observations, questions? All right then, let's barrel on forward. Now this next teaching is different from most of Pirkei Avot because, with very few exceptions, Pirkei Avot has teachings and not stories. But this story, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, this is a little different. It does have a teaching attached to it, but it's, the base of it is this story. So here's what it says. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said, once I was traveling on a journey. A certain man met me and extended greetings. I greeted him in return. He asked, from where do you come? I replied, I come from a great city of scholars and sages. He said, Rabbi, if it would please you to live with us in our community, I would give you thousands of gold dinarim, as well as the most precious stones and pearls in the world. I replied, though you give me all the silver, gold, precious stones, and pearls in the world, I would not live anywhere except in a community where there is Torah. Moreover, neither silver, gold, precious stones, nor pearls will accompany a person in death, only Torah and good deeds. As it is written, when you walk, it will lead you in this world. When you lie down, it will watch over you in the grave. When you awake, it will talk with you in the world to come. Thus is it written in the book of Psalms by David, king of Israel, the teaching you have proclaimed means more to me than a fortune in gold and silver. And it is written, mine is the silver, mine the gold, says the Lord of hosts. Okay, so the teachings of the tradition have to be lived out in a place of Torah, right? Because if you live in a place without Torah, where will you achieve wisdom and how will you live as a Jew? Because you might choose to live a life of wealth somewhere apart from your faith and your community, but what's going to help you sustain a life of integrity? That's the concern of Yossi ben Kisma. He says, I'm not going to take that chance. You know, I'm reminded of the line from The Godfather, you know, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. And this rabbi gets an offer that many people would believe he couldn't refuse. He says, he might have said, you know, with that kind of money, I'll build a place of Torah. I can attract many other sages. But he knew that it would all be about the money. You know, he came from a city of sages and scholars who had a different set of motivations. So he wasn't moved by this offer. And in so many words, he's saying, you can't take it with you. Right? When a person dies, neither silver nor gold nor precious stones nor pearls accompany him, only Torah and good deeds. Because all those valuables are just ornaments. Right? God says, mine is the silver, mine is the gold. Right? If you acquire wealth, well, you know, you're just switching owners. But by increasing Torah and good deeds, you give the world something real, which leads you to life, honors you in death, crowns you in the world to come. So that's kind of a trifecta there. Now, there is one drawback to this teaching. If Yossi ben Kisma refuses to live anywhere but a place of Torah, what that means is he doesn't build a new place of Torah. And as Rabbi Mark Angel points out, it is fortunate for the Jewish people that at least some rabbis and teachers did not follow his example. But they brought Torah and communities that, you know, to places that otherwise would have lacked Jewish observance and learning. And usually they did it with minimal compensation, certainly not with a shot at such riches. Now, we don't know exactly why he was not willing to go to a new place, even, you know, for an excellent rabbinic contract. Might have been he was young and inexperienced, not sure if he could really build a Jewish community from scratch. Or he might have been older, might have been, you know, physically weaker and not up to the task of building a new community. But the real question is, you know, how important is it for each of us to be in a place where there are rich opportunities for Jewish life and learning? And he says, don't undervalue, you know, community and the kind of positive influences it can have on our lives. You know, having neighborhoods and places to pray and values of the people around us, those are all very important. But he also says a truly inclusive community is one that goes beyond just tolerance. We want to make sure that people have access to the wise and the righteous and the pious, and certainly people of all kinds of backgrounds should have access to those good influences. So there is a little bit of a downside to this teaching. And the Jewish world has to respond to the challenge of creating new places of learning in Jewish life. So, comments or questions up to here? Yes, Lou. Lou, you have to unmute.
Sorry. The downside, as you refer to it, I agree with a lot. It has bothered me for a lot of years, even before I came to Houston and Beth Yeshurun, that so many of the young new rabbis and graduates of JTS and out in LA, they look to go to communities that have what they need instead of bringing what they have to communities that don't have it. I have written and discussed this with people such as Arnold Eisen and Steve Wernick when he was with United Synagogue. It doesn't seem to resonate a whole lot. That I think what these seminaries need to do is say, go out into the world and make Judaism and spread it, instead of making it in just your own, filling your own needs.
There was, for many years, there was a requirement at JTS that rabbis spend at least a couple of years either in communities that were considered like, hardship placements, or that they go into the chaplaincy, which, the military chaplaincy for a long time needed more rabbis than they had access to. All right. So I think in the 40s and 50s, those kinds of rules helped ensure that smaller communities had, at least for a time, younger and energetic rabbis who came out of school, and you had a strong, and now they could achieve the same thing by providing incentives, right? So let's say that you come out of school and you have a certain amount of loan money to pay off, right? So if you take what's called a hardship pulpit for a minimum of 3 years, then your loan gets erased, right? So obviously those kinds of things require investment, but they would solve this problem for many places. Communities like the one that I come from in Oklahoma City, which for a long time, we either didn't get rabbis or we got rabbis that really were not high quality rabbis, was because, who wanted to go to Oklahoma City, which was out in the middle of nowhere? Sometimes, in fact, we got rabbis who wanted to get away from a place where they had made a bad reputation for themselves, right? So if we could provide incentives or even requirements for graduates to go into such communities, I think that would go a long way to solving the problem that you're talking about, Lou.
That's exactly the kind of process that I had discussed with them. That it's the synagogues, and this is particularly, I don't want to say unique, but it's mostly within the conservative movement, because you've got Chabad that goes everywhere, and you've got, and in the Reform movement, they don't care so much to have kosher restaurants. So it's more in the conservative movement, and if you could, it's the synagogues that provide this, a lot of the sources, through either themselves making donations to the seminaries or United Synagogue, which is an organization of synagogues, to have the seminaries support the communities that don't have the resources.
Yeah, there are exceptions to this. If I have a young couple, and one of them, or both of them for that matter, are coming out of seminary, and they're committed to the use of the mikveh on a monthly basis, I can't ask them to go to a community that doesn't have a mikveh, right? That kind of hardship, I don't think is fair to impose upon people. So, communities got to have a certain minimum for people to be able to, provide for young rabbis.
I think that what Lou says has got a lot of truth to it, though. Chabad would say, we need you to go to this community so you can build the mikvah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
It's not they don't see it. It is a hardship for the first couple of weeks or whatever, maybe months. I'm not don't mean to demean that. They need a mikvah, but it is a responsibility to face the reality and build the mikvah, rather than that's going to be a really big inconvenience to me.
Right. And so, you know, for the first few years, they might have to drive 50 miles or 100 miles to go to the nearest mikveh. Right? But they, you know, they'll get seed money for the first year, and then they have to build a Chabad house, and then they have to build a mikveh, and that's part of the deal if you're part of the army of the Rebbe.
Rabbi, you said what seminary can require. How can they require what you do after you've graduated?
Well, they say, you know, this is the commitment you have to make if we're going to graduate you. Right? You sign on to this or else. Right? And that's what they did in the 40s and 50s, Ann.
A lot of the,
you know, the 40s and 50s, you know, the military had specific needs. And so people understood that. And generally speaking, with exceptions, people accepted that, right? Now, this was also before they had requirements that people spend a year in Israel. So there were fewer requirements while you were in school. There were more requirements while you were outside of school. Yeah, Nick.
Thank you. How does, when you graduate from seminary, what is the process of getting employed? How does that work? Because it sounds like, unlike Chabad or, you know, Catholic priests where they just put you somewhere, or the Jesuits that.
No, it's not like that at all. Right? When you are graduating from a conservative seminary, you are given a list of all the congregations that are looking for rabbis or for assistant rabbis. And you are told these are, shall we say, A congregations, meaning congregations of 250 families or smaller, or assistantships. And if you want a congregational position, as opposed to, let's say, working in a day school or working as a community educator or working as a chaplain, if you're just looking for congregation work, then these are the congregations you can apply to. And we have your resume, so just tell us which congregations you want us to send your resume to. And you can send them to as many as you want.
Do they pay differently?
Yes, every congregation fills out a questionnaire. And one of the pieces of that questionnaire is, what kind of package are you offering? So let's say maybe you have a package that offers a salary of $100,000,
Okay.
but you can divide that into various pieces. Maybe it's only $65,000 in cash, but $25,000 enables you to, you know, for parsonage, maybe for, you know, your house payments, and the rest of the money might be for book purchases or supplies that you need, or for travel to different conventions and study opportunities, et cetera, et cetera.
You think it'd be better if it was more standardized, Rabbi?
Not necessarily. I think that the questionnaires do a lot to tell people what they need to know. And
Okay.
there's always things, shall we say, underneath the surface, the things that are unwritten in those questionnaires. and with a little bit of help from the placement director of the Rabbinical Assembly, those freshman rabbis are able to have a good understanding of what's contained there and what's good for them.
Because if I was a young rabbi, and especially if I came from a family that had means, that were financially well off, I think it'd be kind of cool to go somewhere and build something. If I didn't have a lot of financial pressure. You know, I had friends that
Yes.
even after the service, the military, their parents just stroke a check for college. I mean, most
Yeah.
people don't have that, but I've met some, and
Right.
for them it was awesome, including doctors, because they didn't have to worry about all that. And some of them ended up volunteering, doing other things that were pretty cool.
Right. So, you know, there are people who have done that because
Yeah.
for one reason or another, they had means or they had financial backers
Right.
before they ever got started. And so sometimes that's how it works. And someone will carve out a very different kind of rabbinate because they have those opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I might add, Nick, and you may already know this, but rabbis have a contract. They're not employees. So an enormous amount is negotiable going in. It's not like, here's the job and HR says that this is what we offer and blah, blah, blah. They sit down and they
It's
negotiate.
negotiated. There's a lot that is negotiated. So a rabbi might say, you know, I know that on your questionnaire, you would like for your rabbi to be able to be the regular Torah reader. And that's not uncommon in small congregations or even to some degree in medium-sized congregations. Maybe there just isn't somebody who's really good, or the congregation can't afford to hire somebody else to do that. Well, the rabbi may say, you know, I have a terrible singing voice. Right? You probably don't want to hear that every week. You know, I'm a great preacher. You'll love my sermons, but my Torah reading, not so much. And so congregations will bat that back and forth, and it'll be negotiated. Or maybe the rabbi just doesn't see themselves as spending all that time preparing for Torah reading, and they don't want to be stuck with that. So again, that's something that's likely to be negotiated. But, you know, for the guy or gal who's willing to do that, it can be a real asset in negotiations.
It's very interesting. I had no idea that this was the case.
Okay? Yeah. So, okay, moving back to the text. Yeah, my camera, by the way, keeps slipping down. So, you know, I know that I have a great forehead, but, you know, it tends to be that's going to be more of what you will see of me. We'll see if we can get the camera to.
Do you remember that old meme, that really old meme where it's Kilgore was here and there's a guy with his head over the fence? Do you remember that? Never mind. That's what you look like. All we could see was like your nose and your head.
Yes.
That was the cat with his paws over the fence.
Right. Moving right along here. Mishnah number 10. Right? The Holy Blessed One acquired 5 possessions in the world. And these are Torah, heaven and earth, Abraham, the people of Israel, and the Holy Temple. I'm going to skip reading through all of these. Just, you know, you can see for yourself that each one has a proof text. And I think, you know, the rabbis are saying these are the essential claims about Judaism. You know, the world is created by God. The Torah is the plan for creation. You know, heaven and earth, right? You know, there's heaven up there and there's earth down here, right? Abraham is the first, the founder of the people of Israel. The people of Israel are supposed to be the students of Torah. The temple was the focus of Jewish piety and practice. So these are all special concerns of Judaism, basic ingredients necessary for God's plan for the world to work, and therefore they are God's possession. Okay? So these are the ingredients, the possessions of the world, right? And some commentators read it as a response to the teaching of Yossi ben Kisma, who said he would only live in a place of Torah even if you offered him all the wealth in the world. And it says, you know what? There's more to life than just Torah. Torah is important, and it's not that you should trade in the learning and practice of Torah for wealth, but learning Torah isn't everything. It doesn't guarantee you how to deal with real people. It doesn't always tell you how to manage what you feel about being Jewish or being wherever you meet God. Right? And all of these possessions of God represent something in which God has a special presence intertwined with him. And, Torah, God's revealing of his will, heaven and earth, the spiritual and physical places where God is accessible, Abraham, with whom God had a special connection as Abraham discovered God, the people of Israel who continue to bear witness to God's presence and to the law, and the temple itself, which was already destroyed well before this teaching was edited. But in the minds of the rabbis, this was still a place where God's presence could be accessed in the future. And, the idea that God has certain possessions in the world is a little bit of a paradox. Some of you will remember Psalm 24, which happens to be the psalm for the day for Sunday. Right? It says, the world and everything in it belong to God. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But this teaching says there are certain specific things that God possesses, maybe a little more than other things. There are certain things more connected to God than others. Now, at least that's how we perceive them. So it's relatively easy for most of us to think of Torah as one of God's possessions, but maybe that challenges us to recognize God's presence even when it's not so obvious. When you think about it, it's really a very interesting idea that God has possessions in the world. Think of it this way: God makes investments in certain things, and those are things that make a difference in our souls, that help our souls grow and develop in the right direction. So, comments or questions here? Yeah, Ann.
How can they say that it belongs to Hashem and that he finds it essential? Doesn't that bring up the question, well, then why did he let it be destroyed and it's been 10 centuries and it's still gone?
I may have missed something that you said, Ann. I'm not sure what you mean.
How can they say that the temple is essential when it's gone for 10 centuries?
Oh, okay. So,
and how could Hashem let it be gone?
So the idea of the temple is that there is a place where God's presence can be accessed. So if the temple is destroyed, then there's going to be a problem with access, which we're going to have to try to solve in different ways. Either we try to solve it by rebuilding the temple, or we solve it by creating new places for accessing God. Whether it's synagogues or, study places.
But synagogues, they compared to the temple, wow.
Yeah, so it's a mini temple for sure, right? But even a home, the table at which you eat is compared to the Mikdash. So, I don't think the rabbis would have had too much trouble with that.
Mm.
All right. Let me go to the last teaching here, because I definitely want to get finished today. Everything that the Holy Blessed One created in the world was created solely for God's glory. As it is written, everything that is called by my name, I created it, I formed it, I made it for my glory. And it is written, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. So all the ingredients that are mentioned in the last teaching, and in fact, everything in the world is created by God for his glory, for the coming of God's kingdom. Just like we say near the end of Aleinu, we hope for a day when everyone will, number one, acknowledge God, and number two, orient their lives accordingly. It's not about our honor, nor is it because God needs us to acknowledge him. The ideal blueprint for life is for us to orient around God, to be focused beyond ourselves. That's what gives meaning to life. This last teaching, because it was always studied on the Shabbat before Shavuot, may have been a reminder to people that it's not all about Torah. It's about God's glory, right? The giving of the Torah, which we celebrate on Shavuot, it's not that it gives superior status to the Jewish people. That's not so. Everything in the world is for God's glory, including the Torah. So you got to live in such a way as to contribute to the glory of God. And Rabbi Martin Cohen, who's a commentator on this last chapter in the conservative commentary on Pirkei Avot, he asks an interesting question. With this, I want to conclude. He says, can we modern readers get down from our lofty pedestals long enough to embrace that sublime truth fully and without reservation? Can we learn to live in the world in a way that reflects our belief that the God of Israel is the God of the nations? So hopefully faith can make us proud without making us arrogant or condescending, right? So with that, comments or questions on this final teaching?
Rabbi Cohen's first name?
I'm sorry?
Rabbi Cohen's first name?
Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank all of you who have joined me for all or part of this journey through the last chapters of Pirkei Avot. It's always a pleasure to go back through and to teach from Pirkei Avot and to gain new insights from my students. So thank you all very much, and I will meet with our mysticism class at noon.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you all.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.